The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brooks Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brooks Show on this Thursday, November 16th, Thanksgiving in a week from today. Hard to believe. Hope everybody's having a fantastic week and looking forward to, I guess, the weekend starts tomorrow. So that's exciting, and it's, I think, a lot of people taking next week off given Thanksgiving. So a long week. It should be. I like this start of this season. The Thanksgiving to Christmas is a really good time, really through New Year. Time for reflection, time to organize my desk, time for, you can see all the mess over there, time to, reflect, plan for next year and everything else. So welcome to holiday season. It's basically here. All right, today we are going to talk about TikTok and Osama bin Laden. There's a combination I didn't think I would be talking about. We'll talk about Ben Shapiro, Candace Owen, and their spat. We'll talk about that a little bit. People have asked me what I think, and people have asked me what they actually said. And then we'll talk about Tucker Carlson comments about basically, really, Ben Shapiro, even though he doesn't name him by name, to Candace Owen and, Tucker Carlson's comments generally on what's going on in Gaza and his comparison of that to other issues that should concern us at the top of our day. So a lot of celebrity names we're throwing out. We'll definitely talk Shapiro, Owens, Tucker. And then finally, we'll talk about kind of the attitude towards the war in the United States, the real shifting sentiment towards Israel and towards the war in Israel, and I'm not sure how much this is reflective of the rest of the West, but certainly in the United States, there's a big shift, or there's a slow shift, however you want to see it, but there is a shift, and I think that's reflected in Tucker's comments. And how this is all navigated, I think, is going to say a lot about the future of Western civilization. So I am on the side of those who are worried. I am more worried than ever. I thought I was more worried than ever when Trump was president, but now I'm more worried than I was worried back then. So it just does get worse. It makes it more difficult for me to be rationally optimistic as the day goes by. Anyway, let's not get into that. We've got a whole thing to talk about bin Laden and TikTok, right? Reminder, you can ask questions. You can ask questions by using the Super Chat. You can ask questions by using the Super Chat. You can also support the show by using either Super Chat or by using stickers, making a contribution online. Is the video kind of choppy again? I'm getting another piece of equipment tomorrow that should solve that problem. I also need to, check the settings on the camera, but hopefully by the weekend, this problem will be gone. If the equipment arrives on time, who knows? What else do I want? You can support the show by contributing through Patreon. You can support the show by contributing through what do you call it? PayPal, yaronbrookshow.com/support. You can support the show through Venmo, through Subscribestar, through Locals, through basically any means known to man. Even if you want to pay by Bitcoin, there's, I think, a feature on my website that allows you to gift me some Bitcoin. That would be cool. That'd be cool. I don't promise to hold it, but it'd be cool to have it and sell it. So lots of Bitcoin, please. All right. Let's see, what else? Logistically, yes, remember the show is supported by the Ayn Rand Institute, and the Ayn Rand Institute is holding a special event on the Fountainhead. It's coming up. Check it out on aynrand.org/start here. You can also find other programs and events that are happening, that the Ayn Rand Institute is organizing, things that you can register for, like the European Conference and ARU and a whole lot of other stuff, all going to be available. You can find it on aynrand.org/start here. Please use that URL /start here to show that you're coming from the Yaron Brook Show. I get credit for that. All right, let's jump in. Let's jump in. And what are they talking about? I heard the human eye can't perceive more than 60 frames per second. Okay. TikTok and Bin Laden. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are following this. I don't know how many, but about a few days ago, it started where on TikTok, there appeared these videos where young people announced to the world that they have read Bin Laden's letter, a letter that Bin Laden published and was published for him in The Guardian, which is the British left-wing British newspaper, and that these young people, the young people who'd read this, basically, read the Bin Laden paper and went, well, whoa, Bin Laden was right. He predicted it. He saw it. Bin Laden's not the bad guy here. Bin Laden's actually right. He's identified all the post-colonial sins of the West. He was just one of us. He was just one of us social justice warriors. He was one of the people, actually fighting Western colonialism, Western racism, Western elitism, Western cultural superiorityism, and indeed Western decadence. And a few people posted these TikTok videos. They were watched by millions, I guess. And then more videos showed up, and more videos showed up. So TikTok is now flooded with videos saying Bin Laden was right. The West was wrong. Bin Laden was just. The West was wrong. Bin Laden has a just cause on his side. He was the true social justice warrior. So you see a lot of these videos out there, all by young people, I guess, and they are everywhere. Of course, we also know that the algorithms for TikTok are guided, at least to some extent, if not a complete extent, by China, and you'd expect China to encourage viewership and encourage participation of anything anti-American. Hard to tell if these people are doing these videos in order to get attention, because this is the cool, hot thing to do right now. Hard to tell if these videos are being done because people actually believe in them. But there are hundreds, thousands of these videos on TikTok, and they are a reflection, I think, at least to some extent, of the state of mind of much of, not a majority, but much of the youth in our culture. They hate Western civilization. And look, it's not surprising. Since they were babies, over the last 20 years, they have been taught that Western civilization is horrific. It commits war crimes. It has subjugated the peoples of the world. It colonized the people of the world. Yeah, true, it was 100 and something years ago, but since then, they just keep adding to it, and the colonies continue in places like Israel, and the suffering that they inflicted on the world was so vast and so great that the people that were colonized are still suffering from it today. They have, since they were babies, been taught that fundamentally the West is decadent, corrupt, horrific, oppressive, privileged, and that its wealth is a result of exploitation and stealing. This has been the message of our intellectuals. This has been the message of Marxists, but it's also been the message of the post-Marxist, if you will, the anti-Marxist left, which is the woke, the politically correct, the CRT, the entire West, the entire Western intellectual establishment, which is dominated by the left and dominated by the hatred of the West. And the result is young people who hate the West. and who now, thinking about it, reading what bin Laden wrote, are sympathetic to Al-Qaeda. And not surprising, therefore, sympathetic to Hamas. Hamas is just Al-Qaeda, a local Al-Qaeda chapter, nothing more than that. The letter that they are reading is a letter that Osama bin Laden published. It's titled Letter to America. It starts off in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, and with a bunch of quotes from the Quran about fighting disbelievers. It is a letter that was published, as I said, in 2002 after 9/11 in The Guardian. It is, I have to say, because I've now read it, even though The Guardian has taken it off their website, interestingly enough, without any explanation. 2 days ago, The Guardian took it off their website, or yesterday they took it off their website. It is a brilliant letter. I mean, you got to give it to Osama bin Laden. The guy was smart. The guy had a deep understanding of the West and its weaknesses. He had, now maybe it's not him, but he had people who really knew English, people who knew and understood how to impact Western audiences. I mean, in many respects, this letter plays right into the hands of the anti-Western left. It understands the anti-Western left. It understands the grievances. It focuses on their grievances, even though bin Laden is presenting his grievances against the West. These are not his grievances against the West, because his grievances against the West, he wrote extensively about in the 90s and before 9/11, so we know what his grievances are. They're not exactly what's reflected in the letter, certainly not in terms of the priorities. This is a propaganda letter, brilliantly crafted, to sway people in the West towards his side and to hate themselves. Bin Laden generally, if you read him, pre-9/11, cared very little about Israel. Israel was never a big factor that motivated bin Laden. Bin Laden cared about the United States and its decadence. He cared about the secularization of the West. That was his focus. That is what he cared most about. And in this letter, he starts off with the Palestinians in Israel. He doesn't care about the Palestinians. He cares about destroying America like he did the Soviet Union. In his mind, he believes he destroyed the Soviet Union. He cares about, again, decadence and secularism. But here's how he phrases it. This is, again, you got to admire his ability as a propagandist. Evil people have this great ability to identify the weaknesses in their opponents and to really go after them. So he starts off the letter by saying, why are we fighting and opposing you? You know, because that was the big question after 9/11. Why? Why did this happen? And then second, what are we calling you to? What do we want you to do, in other words? That's the more interesting part you'll see in a minute. And what do we want from you? So here's what he says, why they're fighting. They're fighting us because the West has attacked Palestine. The Jews, it's not even Israelis, the Jews stole Palestine, they attacked Palestine through the Jews, and they support the Jews, taking Palestine. Palestine is a property of Islam. Islam captured it from the Romans. They drove out the Romans, which is, the Byzantine Empire, he associated with the Romans. He should say the Christians were there first, and they drove out the Christians. But he's not going to say that. He's going to position it as the Romans. So he's manipulating history in order to argue his cause, right? And then he has a whole list, right? So Palestine is number one, but then beyond Palestine, you attacked Somalia, and you attacked this country, that you support the Russians in Chechnya. This is at a time where Russia was slaughtering Muslims in the thousands in Chechnya. You support oppression of the Indians in Kashmir. You support the Jewish aggression, again, not Israeli, Jewish aggression against Lebanon. And then he goes on and on. You support oppressive Islamic regimes, Muslim regimes, that prevent the people from establishing Sharia law. Like the people want Sharia law. And you, by supporting, I don't know, the dictator of Syria, the dictator of Jordan, the dictator of Egypt, prevent the people from achieving real Sharia law, and instead they get these half-secularized Islamic countries. Then these governments, these Muslim governments, are doubly evil because they sell you oil for pittance, and you are exploiting them and getting all this oil. So everything, the United States does, the sanctions in Iraq, this is before the invasion of Iraq, the sanctions in Iraq have killed millions of people. A child dies every day in Iraq because of the sanctions you impose of them. No reference to Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait, or no reference to Saddam Hussein's brutality towards his own people. Forget about that. And on and on and on and on, all about how the West treats the Muslim world badly and always has. And of course, it's the American people, and then this is so fascinating, right? He says, well, what about the fact that we attack civilians? You argue that we shouldn't be attacking civilians because they're not responsible. And he says, whoa, that's not right. He says, you're the land of the free. And therefore you tell us, you elect your own representatives. And by electing your own representatives, aren't you responsible for what they do? And if you don't like what they do, why haven't you elected those representatives out? Why haven't you replaced your government? And don't you pay taxes to the American government? And aren't those taxes then used to support Israel, to kill Muslims, to do all these things around the world? So there are no innocent Americans. There is no such thing as innocent Americans. You are part of the war machine. And, isn't it the American people who employ the military? Don't you pay the soldiers? So aren't you responsible for what your soldiers do in your name? Of course you are. So you're legitimate targets. And he says this is why the American people cannot be innocent of all the crimes committed by the Americans and the Jews against us. And he says, Allah, the Almighty, legislated the permission and the option to take revenge. He's arguing he's doing this all in self-defense. Thus, if we are attacked, then we have the right to attack back. Whoever has destroyed our villages and towns, then we have the right to destroy their villages and towns. Whoever has stolen our wealth, then we have the right to destroy their economy. And whoever has killed our civilians, then we have a right to kill theirs. Straight out of Hamas. So again, you get the propaganda and how these kids are buying it. I mean, how is this different than what their professors are teaching them at the university? Aren't they teaching them the same thing? Aren't they teaching them exactly the same thing? That is America responsible for all the evils out there in the world? That is the Jews in America that have oppressed the Muslim world for all these decades, centuries? So I don't know why anybody out there is shocked by the TikTok phenomenon. It's not Chinese algorithms that are the problem. It's not TikTok that is the problem. The problem is our educational institutions. The problem is our attitude towards Western civilization and Western values. The problem is that we don't educate our kids in history, proper history. We don't educate our kids about what actually happened. We don't educate our kids about the virtues and values of Western civilization. So yeah, what you get is self-hatred. What you get is Bin Laden is just saying the same thing my professor did. The real enemy of the United States is not China. It's not even Bin Laden, because Bin Laden can be eradicated easily. It's not Russia. The real enemy of the United States are the professors at our universities teaching this garbage. And the people in the media, left and right, who support them. Who empty Western civilization and the values and what it represents of all content, and blame the West for everything. The enemy is among us. The enemy is within us. The enemy is right here. And they are the ones who need to be dealt with. Once they are dealt with, any external threat is easy. But what is surprising is that these kids didn't read the whole thing, right? They didn't read the answer to the second question. Because Bin Laden posed two questions. Why do we do this? And what do we want from you? But what do we want from you? As for the second question that we want to answer, what are we calling you to? And what do we want from you? One, the first thing we are calling you to is Islam. This is the religion of the unification of God. This is the religion that really gives you freedom. This is the true religion. And we are calling you to religion. To a religion of manners, righteousness, mercy, honor, purity, and piety. It's a religion that shows kindness to others. We saw that on October 7th. Justice between them. Granting them their rights. We see this in Iran. You see this in Iran right now with the girls. I mean, they're granted all their rights. And defending the oppressed and the persecuted. Yeah, you guys have done a good job with the Palestinians and all the other oppressed in your Muslim world. It is a religion of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil with the hand, tongue, and heart. Yeah, right, 9/11. What? It was just self-defense. He also says that it is a religion of jihad in the way of Allah. Right. And we don't discriminate. Again, playing to our left, we regard anybody, color, sex, or language as equal. Right. But so that's the one thing. They call us, they want us all to Islam. They're calling us to submit to Allah. Second, the second thing we call you to is to stop your oppression, lies, immorality, and debauchery that is spread among you. And this is good. Hopefully these leftist kids have read up to this point. We call you to but maybe here the right might really embrace this. We call you to be a people of manners, principles, honor, and purity. To reject the immoral acts of fornication. No fornication, guys. Homosexuality, intoxicants, gamblings, and trading with interest. Trading with interest. Oh, man. He goes on to say, I have to read this because it's so relevant to my, But notice, we know what they do to homosexuals. We know what they do to fornicators. Intoxicants, no alcohol, no drugs, guys. No gambling and no trading with interest. And this is what he writes. You're a nation who, this is one. You're a nation that permits usury, which has been forbidden by all the religions. Yet you build your economy and investments on usury. As a result of this, in all its different forms and guises, the Jews have taken control of your economy, through which they have then taken control of your media, and now control all aspects of your life, making you their servants and achieving their aims at your expense. I told you usury it's always there. Anytime you find an evil ideology, they're anti-usury right there. They're anti-usury right in the beginning. I mean, I wonder what Knowles would think of that paragraph. I wonder how much of it he would agree with, or Matt Walsh, or any of those guys, right? You're a nation that permits gambling in all its forms. You're a nation that exploits women like consumer products or advertising tools, calling upon customers to purchase them. You're a nation that practices the trade of sex in all its forms, directly and indirectly. Giant corporations, establishments are established under the name of art, entertainment, tourism, and freedom, and other deceptive names you attribute to it. And because of all this, you are being described in history as a nation that spreads diseases that were unknown to man in the past. Go ahead and boast to the nations of man that you brought them AIDS as a satanic American invention. All right, you can see, hopefully, how easily this could capture the imagination of young people in the West. How easily this matches up with everything they've been studying and everything they've been learning and everything that's been part of their education. And how easily this can become an attraction to them. And why, in a conflict between the West, in a conflict between Western civilization and Bin Laden, they're going to take the side of Bin Laden. I'm reading, those of you coming in late, I'm reading from Bin Laden's letter to the American people, written in 2002, that people on TikTok are extensively commenting on, and generally their commentary has been positive. That is, they're rallying around. They think Bin Laden was right. Whoa, we read this. We were taught our whole lives. Our parents told us Bin Laden was evil, was really, really bad. And now we read this and we go, whoa, maybe he's right. He actually is right. And not only is he right, he's completely consistent with what our professors at university have taught us. God, Allah, or whatever you want to call him, help us. This is we have reached so low as a culture. We have reached so low in educating our children, so badly in providing with the ability to think and to study and to know their own history and to know the world, that they are now on the side of barbarism. They are now on the side of primitivism. They are now on the side of complete debauchery, complete evil. They are now the side of those who are murdered and raped and tortured and set afire to Jews and Arabs, for that matter, on October 7th. It is hard to, it's obvious that this is what we were going to do. This is where we were going to go. I guess it's happened faster than I expected, or at least it's caught up with me in a way that I don't think any of us saw coming in the short run. This is the world in which we live. We live in a world in which Bin Laden is more popular than Western civilization, and where Hamas is celebrated for their post-colonial, strength and commitment. The left in this country has really gone, nuts and has now embraced their nihilism explicitly, completely, without any reservations. And the massacre on October 7th just has brought this to the forefront, and now they're embracing Bin Laden. Why not? Let's roll in all these massacres together. Let's roll in the evil of Islam completely together. All right, let's see. It's late. I spent a lot of time on that. All right, let's do Shapiro, Owens, and Tucker. So, as you probably know, Ben Shapiro has been just since October 7th, just on a roll in terms of expressing his support for Israel, expressing his disdain for Hamas, showing them to be the evil that they are, standing up against the enemies of Western civilization. He has been as good as it gets on this particular issue. And I've supported him. I've told him that I support him, and I have told you, and at least posted this on Twitter, retweeted some of his posts and supported him. He has done some excellent lectures in Oxford and at Cambridge and elsewhere where he has defended Israel and done a very good job at it. Ben Shapiro is super smart and super sharp and super quick, and he does a good job when it comes to this. During some of these, not everybody, put it this way, not everybody at the Daily Wire has been as passionate, has risen to this occasion in quite the way Ben Shapiro has. I've not been watching Matt Walsh or some of the others to see what their commentary has been like on this issue, but I can't imagine that it has been as strong and as supportive of Israel as Ben's has. But I do know that one person in particular at the Daily Wire has not, and that is has been counter, if you will, to Ben Shapiro, and that is Candace Owen. Candace has, since October 7th, been committed to the both sides of this issue. Israel is pretty bad too. Israel, she has argued, is an apartheid state. Israel does violate the rights. And, maybe there really is something to the Palestinian grievances. What happened on October 7th is horrific, but what Israel does is horrific too. The kind of moral equivalency that you see on the left, Candace Owen has embraced that same moral equivalency on the right and has been a voice for that. I mean, this is not surprising. Candace Owen has been horrible and awful for a long time, for a very long time. And she's been terrible in Ukraine. She was terrible on COVID and vaccinations. She's just been awful in pharmaceutical companies. If I was running Daily Wire, I would have fired her a long time ago. But of course they can't. I mean, they do have to. They probably have a contract where they can't. But she's particularly bad on issues that on many issues that Ben Shapiro I think is particularly good on. So Ben Shapiro was asked about Candace Owen on some of these talks that he's giving as he's traveling around out there. And he criticized her, right? He basically said that he thought what she was saying was wrong and he wished she hadn't said it and that she was completely off base on these issues, and in particular with regard to the Israel thing. But I don't think that was the only issue he has with her. He's good on Ukraine and on other issues as well, and they disagree on them. But I think this Israel issue is particularly sensitive for Ben, as I think it should be, not just because he's a real Jew, but because I think he understands, I certainly understand, maybe more than him on this, that this really is a battle for the soul of the West. This really is a battle about Western civilization, just like 9/11 was, in spite of what bin Laden says. Anyway, Candace responded to this, or at least it was interpreted that she responded to this, by quoting scripture. So she wrote, quote, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they should be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manners of evil against you falsely for my sake. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." You might want to remember that, all you greedy businessmen out there and finance guys who might be listening to this show. She follows up that post with "Christ is King." Now, what is she saying here? She's saying, yeah, I'm being criticized, but I'm in the right. Blessed am I for being criticized. And she says, I don't care about money. I don't care about losing subscribers. I am with right, with justice, with God. And I'm going to say the truth in the face of Ben Shapiro or whoever else there is. Now, she might claim she wasn't talking about Ben, but Ben certainly thought she was talking about him. So Ben retweets her and says, "Candace, if you feel that taking money from the Daily Wire somehow comes between you and God, by all means quit." Now, note, she also stuck in there, the thing about Christ is King, Ben is Jewish. This is what happens when somebody like Ben allies himself with the religious Christian right. They won't tolerate him long term. They won't like him. They won't, because Judaism is wrong, and Judaism is false, and Judaism is, it's, from their perspective, the Jews either convert to Christianity or they go to hell when the Messiah comes back, when Jesus comes back. I mean, I'm reading Dominion right now, which is a really interesting book. So I'll be commenting on Dominion because, Ian Husserl quoted it, and it's been quoted elsewhere. So I will talk a lot about Dominion in the weeks to come, particularly when I finish it. But in Dominion, it's pretty clear that what Christianity is particularly once Paul gets involved, what Christianity is a rejection of Judaism. And an attitude of once the Messiah has come, when Christ has come, once the sons of God has come, Judaism must be repudiated completely. Judaism is way too, what is the word? It's too tribal. It's too exclusive. Too exclusive. And that's and therefore Judaism needs to be gone, because now Christianity, the true religion, is here. And it's universal, of course. Anyway, so she's sticking it to Ben, and I'm sure at the sidelines, Matt Walsh and Knowles, at least somewhat cheering her on. I don't doubt this. This is Candace Owens' response to Ben. You've been acting unprofessional and emotionally unhinged for weeks now. Unhinged. And we have all, this suggests that she's not just speaking for herself, but maybe for the other Christians in the group, and we have all had to sit back and allow it, and have all tried to exercise exceeding understanding for your raw emotion. But you cross a certain line. And when you come from Scripture and read yourself into it, I will not tolerate it. Wow. There's the Christian lion in her. Right? Anyway, I don't know how this is going to get resolved. I don't think this is a little spat. I think this goes to the heart of Ben's ideology and to the heart of Candace's and others at the Daily Wire's ideology. Christianity is incompatible with Judaism, certainly incompatible with Ben Shapiro's kind of Judaism. This Christianity that hates America, that despises America, and the way that Candace and Matt Walsh and that Knowles despise America is incompatible. And I don't know how this is going to be resolved. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how this plays out. She is taking the moral and emotional high ground here. She's trying to. Ben, I can only imagine that unprofessional and emotionally unhinged. Why? Because he sees the world wanting to kill him. And they do. And he would expect his friends to rally to his side. He would expect people who, to a large extent, he made in a Daily Wire, rally to his side. And he's not getting that. Right? He's not getting that. He's getting them kind of saying, well, Ben, maybe you're overdoing it. Maybe you're going over the top. All right, so then, you know my feelings towards Candace Owen and so on, but then, of course, my other favorite person out there in the world, Tucker Carlson, steps into this. And Tucker, as this is going on, says, hey, Candace, come on over to my studio. Let's do an interview. Right? And I want to show you a tiny little segment of this interview. So in it, Candace Owen, is criticizes Ben and tries to present her case. But what here I find interesting is Tucker's position on all of this, which I think is super interesting and super, super stupid and super wrong and super immoral. And Tucker just goes further and further down into deeper and deeper rungs of hell, in my mind, in my moral evaluation of him. So let's listen to Tucker and evaluate what he says. It's only 50 seconds, so I'm going to let it play out, the whole 50 seconds. I won't interrupt every 10 seconds, even though I want to, I know. And then we'll talk about what he says and why I am so, why I think it is so offensive and so horrific, and why I think, why I really am finding it hard to be positive about the future of this country and the future of the West and the future of people who support Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. I find it horrific. I mean, I have my disagreements with Ben Shapiro, and at the end of the day, we are on completely different philosophical places. But he's nowhere as bad as these people are. He's nowhere as bad as these people are. And why do I emphasize these people? I'll talk about the left. And first of all, I talked about the left extensively in Tucker versus Bin Laden. And why do I emphasize these? Because these are supposed to be the defenders of Western civilization. These are the people that Ayn Hirsi Ali just rallied around and, in a sense, embraced. These are the people who are the defenders of the West. These are the people who are defenders of the values. Who should you condemn more? People who are obviously your enemy, or people who some of your associates and many people out there in the world think are your allies? I think it's pretty obvious that the people stabbing you in the back that the world thinks are your allies are much more important to attack than anybody else. So here we go. This is Tucker. And you'll see, there's nothing really too horrible that he says, right?
There's also, I can't help but notice that your views reflect mine, I would say pretty much. I'm an American. I was horrified by what happened on October 7th. I think it was pretty strange. I don't really understand how it happened, but innocents died, and that's awful. And I hated watching it. And I feel so sorry for the Israelis who were killed. However, there's an emotional response that is disproportionate, I think, on the part of some commentators. I mean, our country's being invaded right now by millions of young men whose identities we don't know, who probably don't even like America, and they're now living here. Over 100,000 Americans die every year of fentanyl. I've known a couple. Those are real tragedies. I've never seen anything like the emotion from any commentator around those tragedies as I'm watching about a foreign tragedy. I think that's odd.
I mean, wow. Wow. I mean, where do you even start? Notice how he talks about October 7th. Strange. Don't know how it happened. Basically, setting himself up to present a conspiracy theory, and it's just a matter of time. He hasn't done it yet. He won't do it until the rawness of it goes away. But strange. Don't know how it happened. I mean, there's a conspiracy theory there, just waiting to bubble out of Tucker Carlson's Twitter TV empire, right? It's just unhinged right off the bat. And he says, I feel bad for the Israelis who were killed. He can't say for Israel. He can't say anything more than October 7th was strange. Not evil, not an expression of barbarism, just strange. Strange is so morally non-committal, so morally zero, so morally, maybe there was a good reason for what had happened. It's just strange. Why did it happen the way it happened? Truly sick. This is Tucker Carlson. And then he goes on to say, I don't know, their emotional response is just disproportionate. Really? 1,200 people are murdered, raped, burnt alive, decapitated, tortured. And there is a proportionate response? What is a proportionate response? And these are people who, at least in my understanding, certainly not in Tucker's, I know, because Tucker doesn't have any respect or doesn't have any belief in Western civilization. These are people who are part of the West. These are people who are Western who are being killed. These are people who share your civilizational values. Now, not Tucker's, because Tucker has none. And then there are people who are commenting on this, Ben Shapiro, let's say, who not only sees that as a personal affront because he happens to be Jewish, but also beyond that, it is, it is then explodes into anti-Semitism all over the world, and including in the United States, targeted at him in the United States. Has Tucker Carlson commented on anti-Semitism in the United States? Is he horrified by that? No. No. So it's disproportionate. And why aren't they pissed off at the invasion? Maybe because it's not an invasion? Maybe because 100,000 people are crossing the border because they want work? They're trying to make a better life for themselves? Maybe that's why they're coming? Maybe that's why they're entering? Maybe that's why people are not up in arms, because it's not an invasion? And that terminology is ugly and despicable and horrific? And to compare it, yes, 100,000 people didn't cross over from Gaza into Israel. But they slaughtered, maimed, butchered, raped. Have we seen a dramatic increase in crime generated by illegal immigrants in the United States over the last year? No, crime is actually declining in the United States. Rape, murder, decapitation, burning alive, has that increased in the United States because of the 100,000 invaders coming in? Doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like it. And in what way are these 100,000 invaders going to take over our country, as invaders always do? They can't vote. It is disgusting and despicable and beneath contempt. There's no difference in terms of the ugliness of the point of view between Tucker Carlson and anybody on the left, and the people in TikTok praising bin Laden. Fentanyl killed 100,000 people last year? Yeah. You compare that to rape and pillage? You compare that to murder? People take fentanyl. They take drugs of their own free will. They are committing suicide. Now, we could discuss why they're doing it and the state it's happening. But the fentanyl epidemic is not something caused by somebody outside. It is caused by the demand for drugs by Americans. But God forbid you can't criticize Americans unless they're, elites or Americans you don't like they don't have the right color skin, or they don't come from the right background, or they don't have the right religion. You can't criticize other Americans. It's always the fault of outsiders. Mexican cartels, the Chinese, they're responsible for the fentanyl epidemic. It's not the fact that Americans are demanding drugs and they're demanding ever increasing potency in their drugs, and that is the cause of the fentanyl crisis. Oh no. And we compare that, a real problem in the United States, because we have to ask the question, why are so many people in the United States taking drugs, with butchery? I mean, God help us from people like Tucker Carlson. He is the end of this country, and much more likely to gain political power, much more likely that his ideas are the ones that dominate our political world than are the ideas of the nutty left. Much more likely. And you can see that in the fact that I just saw a story today saying that Donald Trump is seriously considering Tucker Carlson as his VP. Makes complete sense. Complete sense. I don't know that Tucker would take it. I don't know that Donald Trump would actually do it because Tucker's so popular. But it makes sense to me. This is exactly the combination that could win. That could win. And I told you a long time ago, it's been years now, that Tucker Carlson could one day be president and he would be the devil. He would be really, really, really bad. He's smart enough and probably able enough to actually implement the kind of authoritarian tendencies that Donald Trump has. All right, anyway, that's me on Shapiro, Owens, and Tucker. And if you're not depressed enough, let me mention one more thing. And by the way, appreciate if you like the show before you leave. Got a lot of people watching. Like it. If you like it. If you don't like the show, don't like it. But it helps with the algorithm, and hopefully we can get a lot of likes on the show. A lot of people watching. And get it up there in the algorithm. That would help a lot. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. And of course, if you want to support the show, and we've got 155 people watching right now, we've been over 160. Just $100 left to $100-something left to reach our goal. I'd appreciate it. This is going to be a long show. Ask questions or just use a sticker. But let's make the target, given the number of people watching. It should be easy if everybody's willing to trade with me with the value for value and the value, just a couple of bucks, and we blow through the target from everybody. All right. Lastly, if you're not depressed enough, a number of news stories about just how deep and wide the anti-Israel attitude is in this country. We know this of the left, and we know it all over the place in the left of the country. Like cities, there are towns now, at least two that I've read. One is North Andover in Massachusetts, that have decided to fly the Palestinian flag on the town common until December 7th. Right, December 7th, commemorating 2 months to the butchery. They are showing their support for the butchers, flying their flag in support of the butchery. There's at least another one town that's doing the same thing. Also, if you look at polls, support for Israel is declining. When asked, should the United States support Israel? In October, right after the massacre, 41% of Americans said yes. Today, only 32% say yes. Should the U.S. be a neutral mediator? In October, it was 27%. Now it's 39%. Should the U.S. be involved at all? Right. A significant declining percentage thinks the United States should not be involved at all. So, Israel is losing in the PR game across the board. You saw that on the left, yesterday, where there was a demonstration behind, in front of the Democratic, the Democratic Party's offices in Washington, D.C. They tried to break in. It became very violent. The police had to be called. These are leftists attacking the Democratic Party for being too friendly to Israel. The same thing, by the way, is happening in the UK, where the Labour leader, who has been untouchable, he's been dominating the party, Keir Starmer, when he refused to vote to back a vote for Gaza ceasefire, is now under massive attack, and his leadership is being challenged, and his backbenchers are revolting. A number of his senior people in kind of his shadow cabinet have resigned in protest. So the left is imploding over this issue. Now, we could celebrate that. It's good that the left implode. You know, Fibilo says Starmer is a clown. He is. But the clowns that want to get rid of him are like a gazillion times clownier or more evil or more destructive or more horrific than Starmer is. He's relatively rational, as bizarre and nutty as that idea is. But that is the reality. In other words, I think across the board, what you can see is Israel losing support. Those elements on the left and right who despise Israel, who want to see Israel lose, who are ultimately pro-Hamas, they are right. They are consistent. They are fighting, and this is why I think Ben Shapiro should be supported. It's because he should be supported because anybody standing up against these idiots, against this trend in our culture, against the barbarism, should be supported at this point. This is Western civilization versus barbarism. And the left, those on the left that support the barbarians, and those on the right, like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owen, who won't stand up for the West, they are the enemy. They are the enemy. And this is an issue that separates who the enemy is and who are friends. Somebody says, is Netanyahu a clown? Netanyahu is much worse than a clown. Netanyahu, to a large extent, is personally responsible for what has happened in Israel, and I think needs to be. I don't think he's legally, responsible, but morally he's certainly responsible. He should resign. He should have resigned the day after this happened, and if he doesn't resign, he should be voted out of there, and it's his own political party that should excrete him from their presence. They should fire him on the spot. Netanyahu's weakness, appeasement, and even implicit support for Hamas for the last 20 years has got to go. He's got to go. And, he, as I've said many, many times, he often says the right things and does the exact opposite. He often talks the talk. He never walks the walk, never. Maybe he will now because he's in a political corner and he has no options. But he should be significantly politicized, penalized for what he's done in Israel for the last 20 years and how he's weakened Israel. At least the last 16 years, maybe not 20 years. All right. All right, I am surprised that we're so much off the target. The target's not high. We've already been going on for an hour. We've got 165 people watching. You would think we could you would value this enough, you're watching, to get us to our target pretty quickly and easily. I'm a little surprised we haven't got there. Ann Mirkat says, hey, Yaron, what the actual fuck, I think is the word he was using. What the actual fuck is wrong with Elon Musk? He is going to go on Alex Jones's show wearing a sock on his head, too. Furthermore, I'm of the opinion that Gaza must be destroyed. Yeah, I agree with you about destroying Gaza, but it's not going to happen. So we can talk about it all you want. What we should talk is within the realms of what is possible, what they're capable of doing, what should they do. I'm all for flattening Gaza, and I was on October 8th, and I was before October 8th. Before October 7th, Gaza should have been destroyed a long time ago. Certainly Hamas and the entire everything about Gaza should have been decimated. But that's not going to happen. The question is what can be done given the politics of it, and my fear is that nothing will be done, that is, except what's already been done, because the West and the world is turning so anti-Israel that ultimately Israel will capitulate. It will retreat, and we'll have to do it all over again in a few years. In terms of Elon Musk, I don't know what Elon Musk is. I mean, being a genius in business, in tech, does not guarantee you're a genius in anything else, does not guarantee that you know anything about anything. Elon Musk is exhibiting real emotionalistic tendencies, real tendencies towards conspiracy theories, real tendencies towards the irrational. And, you know, what can I say? He's heroic in some aspects of his life, and he's awful in other aspects of his life. And I think the worst thing that happened to Elon himself, the worst thing to happen to him, is buying Twitter, which has reinforced the bad in him, and reinforced the bad in him, and allowed him a platform in which to display publicly the bad, you know, his bad aspects. It was better when he was just once in a while posting. Now when he owns the platform and posting on it constantly. Chad, are nihilists still altruists? Are they a step down the evolutionary ladder, something different? For example, altruists have a perverted sense of justice, and a nihilist has no sense of justice. Well, I mean, all nihilists have to present to themselves and to the people around them that what they're doing in the name of justice. They all do that, right? They all do that. And so nihilists don't walk around saying, we're nihilists and we want to destroy the world and we want to see it burn and we're going to rub our hands and we're going to really enjoy it as it burns. They don't do that. They have to explain what they're doing, and their explanation is always altruism. Altruism is what makes it possible for them to get away with it. It's always in the name of somebody who's oppressed. It's always in the name of social justice. It's always in the name of altruism that they're doing what they're doing, always. So they couldn't get away with it for justice. It's hard to tell, you know, what is lower than what. The one leads to the other. And the one is part of the other. And you can't separate nihilism from altruism. You could argue that altruism to some extent causes nihilism. And then the only way people can hold the nihilism is by interpreting it in their own minds and communicating it to the outside world as altruism, as justice, a perverse sense of justice, as morality. Thanks, Chad. Let's see. Jose just did his first super chat ever. Thank you, Jose. I really, really appreciate that. If everybody did a super chat like Jose, we would be blowing up in terms of the support for the show. So thank you, Jose. Really, really appreciate that. And don't forget to subscribe if you're new and you'd like to follow this channel. Please subscribe, and please like the show, and please show support for the show through the super chat or through Patreon or PayPal, yaronbookshow.com/support. Chad says, also Chad, yeah. You said Shapiro is good on Ukraine. He wants a truce, justifying it with the idea that they are bogged down without much change. You agree with that? No, I don't. I hadn't seen that. I mean, I thought he was good on Ukraine. Maybe he's not as good as I thought he was, which wouldn't shock me. So no, I don't believe a truce is good. I think you just need to keep hammering. I don't buy truces in war. I don't understand truces in war. I think truces are for losers, and you got to keep going. You've got to what is the point? Why would anybody abide by a truce? What is there to gain in a truce? So I don't agree with Ben on a lot of things. I didn't know he said that about Ukraine. But generally, I think he has the right sense about who's in the right and who's in the wrong. I think he's also influenced by people like Jordan Peterson. He's influenced by his listeners. He's influenced by the kind of people Candace Owen and Walsh and Knowles, attract. And so he can't be as honest and as forthright as I think he would like to be. And the best example of that is his view on Donald Trump, which I think he despises Trump. I think he always has despised Trump. But he won't say it. He won't say it, and he certainly won't rally around it because his audience would abandon him. I mean, the reality is that the audience of the Daily Wire today is mostly there, I think, for Walsh, Knowles, and Candace. And I think that if Ben Shapiro said what he actually thought about a lot of issues, capitalism and Trump and things like that, I think he would lose his following and he would lose his support within the Daily Wire. Somebody says, make your own book show part of the Daily Wire. There's no way in hell that it would ever be part of the Daily Wire. They'd never take it. And if they did, I would fail. I would completely flop, just like I did when I tried to do The Blaze. I was on The Blaze. I had a show on The Blaze. I had a radio, basically a radio show on The Blaze, which I did for 6 months. And I gained no traction because what I had to say was not what the Blaze audience wants to hear. And most of what you do in radio, is reinforce what, you find the audience that you're reinforcing their views to them already. And this is during Trump's presidency, and I was anti-Trump. And the Blaze audience didn't want to have anything to do with me, and all they would do is complain about why I'm on there. So, Sylvanus, it seems like it would be easy to point out the contradictions with civilians' government in Bin Laden's letter compared to the Gaza Strip and Hamas. But then doublethink is commonly found nowadays. Yes, huge doublethink. And look, the reality is that Hamas and Bin Laden, they all want the same thing. They want you to submit to Islam. They want you, to the extent that you're a Jew or Christian, they want you to die. To the extent that you are atheist, oh my God, worst wrong of hell is relegated to atheist. You certainly shall die. They want to put you to the sword. They want to destroy you. And for the right, as reflected in Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, cavalier attitude towards these Islamists is suicidal. Suicidal. And it is part of this idea that America needs to hunker down. And if only we hunkered down and we avoided the world and we ignored the world, everything would be great in America. And this is, remember Tucker Carlson's definition of America. What is America? I did a show on this when he did this on video, a year or two ago. America is beautiful scenery, it's a beautiful country, and it's respect for God. That is America. If that's your conception of America, then there's nothing special about America. There's nothing worth defending in America. We might as well submit to Islam. We'll start with submitting to Christ, and then when the Muslim comes, we'll submit to Islam. Why not? What are we fighting for? Beautiful scenery? It's not like the Muslims are going to take away our scenery. Commitment to God? Muslims have commitment to God. So America's not an idea. America's not the Founding Fathers. America's not the Declaration of Independence. None of those are America. What America is God and scenery, nature. I mean, that is worse, as bad as any leftist. Cold Savvy says, I'm glad Shapiro is finally calling out these crazies like Owen. I'm hoping he'll make the right choice and get rid of her and other clowns. Do you think they'll do that? I think they'll screw it up. I don't know. I don't know who owns what within the Daily Wire. I don't know how much power Shapiro has. I forget the name of the CEO of the Daily Wire. I don't know what side of this he comes down on. They're all invested money in the Daily Wire. They have to be careful on not to lose that money. I'm sure that's a consideration. But I really don't know to what extent the Daily Wire, how much of the Daily Wire is Ben Shapiro's, right? I don't know if it's 5%, 10%, 50%, 51%. I don't know. And I don't know the position of a CEO. And I think that will, to a large extent, determine this. Is Tucker worse than Tlaib? Yes, of course he's worse than Tlaib or Jeremy Boring. Much worse than them. Much worse than them. I mean, how can you even compare? Tlaib is Tlaib. We know what she is. She's a leftist. She's crazy on every single issue. And she doesn't attract the flag-loving, God-loving, founding father-loving Americans. Tucker is doing much more damage to America than Tayyip can ever do. Tucker has a bigger audience, and he's doing much more damage because he's taking good people, people who love America, and he's undermining it. He's undercutting it. He's destroying their sense of what America is. He is destroying the very fabric of America. Yeah, but this is where I care more about the fact that she supports Hamas. This is where I care about America. In terms of who is worse for America, Tayyip is a blimp, an insignificant nothing. She will disappear from the sphere as soon as somebody reasonable will run against her, or she'll still be there, but nobody will take her seriously. Tucker Carlson is undermining America on every single one of his shows, and it's Americans, so-called freedom-loving Americans, who are watching him. Biden's not worth yelling at. He's so incompetent. What's there worth yelling about Biden for? God. And Biden on Israel is better than Tucker. Much better. And I yell like this about the left all the time. Right? But Biden's a nothing. To yell about Biden is what a waste of energy. Frank says, if coercion is a roundabout way of controlling perceptions, is war a roundabout way of removing elites? No, I don't get that. If coercion is a roundabout way of controlling perceptions, there's an element of truth to that. It's a roundabout way of controlling the mind. War is doing that on a large scale, but it's not about removing elites. It's about removing ideology. It's about removing certain ideas, it's about removing certain ideas. Now, maybe you do that through elites, but not exclusively through elites, because the people ultimately have to rebel, and they have to be willing to change their mind. So war is an attack against people's ideas. It's on a massive scale, whereas coercion is on a smaller scale. And Mirsha, did Ben Shapiro get Toohee'd? With Toohee'd. Yeah, I mean, he might have, right? I mean, he might have thought he created this empire, the Daily Wire, where he brought in people who shared his values and shared his ideas and shared his view of what America was. And then right now, he's discovering that maybe they don't. And maybe they are his enemies, not his friends. And to some of them, he created them, and yet they are turning against him. And that's a good point. I mean, it's the whole fountainhead analogy is a really good point. I didn't think of that, but yeah, I mean, here he's built them up, and now they're turning him, stabbing him in the back, and it's ideological, and I think it's very real, yeah. Cold Savage says, Klavan also voiced his support for Israel and blamed old people like himself for lack of reform of Social Security. I wish he was better on Rand and on God and on a few other things. But yeah, Klavan, that generation, I think, is better than the new generation. I don't think Klavan, with all his religiosity, would support some of the nonsense that Knowles and Walsh stand for on religion in its place. But maybe I'm wrong. He might be just as bad, but I don't think he is. Adam says, quote, he's quoting Sayyid Qutb. Sayyid Qutb is somebody I talk about a lot in my history of Islamism, of Islamic totalitarianism. Quote, Islam cannot accept or agree to a situation which is half Islam and half Jahiliyya, which is, separated from God. So Islam cannot accept a world in which there are pagans or Christians or atheists or Jews. It cannot accept that. It can only accept a world which is all Islamic. Water is not wet, say it or else, writes, should Israel invite 2 million Africans a year? No, it shouldn't. Israel is a unique situation, as you saw. It has to fight for its very existence. It has to have the kind of cohesion that makes it possible for it to exist. It is a product, it is a result of anti-Semitism. It is a creation of anti-Semitism. And as long as anti-Semitism exists, it needs to be a country that is preserved as a refuge for Jews. It's not ideal. In an ideal world, Israel wouldn't exist. But we don't live in an ideal world. In the world as it is, no. America is in none of those situations. America is not preserving, any kind of particular group. America is, has nothing to fear from Africans. It has nothing to fear from Latin Americans. They are not a threat to it. America is not fighting for its life. America's problems at its universities, it's not immigrants. America's problems are Americans. The people marching in the streets are mostly Americans. And America did invite immigrants, huge numbers of them. And the consequence was that we got America. America is a land of immigrants, whether you like it or not. And when it stops being a land of immigrants, it'll stop being America. Stephen says, in Weiss's recent Fed Society speech, he spoke of anti-Semitism as effectively a canary in the coal mine of social collapse. Can you point to societies that have recovered from this, or is it too late? There's no question that anti-Semitism is part of barbarism. It has been a feature of barbarism throughout Christian history. I don't know if it always leads to collapse. I don't know if that's true in the non-modern era. It was, you saw anti-Semitism in France in the late 19th century. France didn't collapse. I mean, it was weak, certainly in World War I and World War II, but I wouldn't say French society collapsed. So, it's a great soundbite, and there's a certain truth to it. Certainly there was a truth to it in Germany. And certainly there's a logic to it, because once you turn it against some of the most successful people in your society because of their tribal affiliation, then your society is on the way to tribalism, and your society is in a way to a very bad place. And so society collapse is not, is very, very possible. But I don't know. I don't have any case studies where, Russia's society collapsed, but there was no anti-Semitism before. There was anti-Semitism forever in Russia. So the anti-Semitism just was an expression of how corrupt that society was. So I think anti-Semitism is a canary in the coal mine for corruption of society. It doesn't mean that society is going to necessarily collapse, but it does mean there's a real there's a real darkness and a real evil in your society, and whether that can be reversed, I don't know. From Jews were expelled from England for 200 years, and then they were brought back, and they've been treated fairly well in England since then. I don't know, but how long it takes, what it takes, how it plays out. Again, I view the anti-Semitism today not as a canary in the coal mine. The canary in the coal mine is the anti-capitalism of both left and right that has been around for a long time. I view it as just one more step towards the realization of the tribal malignancy that is destroying this country and will continue to destroy it. I think it's one more, not the. And, remember that Barry Weiss, which gave a great talk, by the way, it's a really good talk. Barry Weiss is not, she doesn't have an understanding of what America really is. She doesn't have an understanding of what freedom really means. She doesn't have an understanding of what capitalism really stands for. So she sees things through the lens of free speech, which is good because we're on the safe side of free speech, and to some extent, she's wrong on certain issues around free speech. She sees it through the lens of being Jewish and experiencing anti-Semitism, and she is a believing Jew for the first time. She sees it through the lens of, to some extent, being gay. But she doesn't have a philosophical conception of what is going on in the world right now. She's just shocked by what happened in the New York Times and that caused her to leave. She's shocked by what's happening right now with anti-Semitism. But there's a sense in which those of us who look at it philosophically are not that shocked by it, because it all makes sense if you understand the philosophical rot that it is at the heart and at the root of America, unfortunately, over the last, long time, 100 years. All right, I have a hard stop in 10 minutes, so we'll do these questions. We're gone an hour and a half, so it's a long show. It's not my typical news show, so maybe I should have set up the super chat target a little higher. Not sure. All right, Frank says, you can still do, a sticker. You can still do a sticker to support the show without asking a question, because we don't really have much time for questions, but do a sticker and show your support for the show. Don't forget to like the show before you leave, and don't forget to subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Okay, Frank says, Mohammedanism, a historical survey, 1949 by H.A.R. Gibb, Oxford University, a sympathetic, clear, and objective presentation, Shia, Sunni, and Sufism. Cool. I mean, I can't judge because I haven't read it, but, it's a resource. There was a lot of sympathy to Islam, certainly after World War I, the whole Lawrence of Arabia mythology around it. To what extent were they attuned to the nihilistic nature of Islam taken seriously? I don't know. Right, Henry Pritchard says, love the show you're on. Thank you. How do you best deal with close friends, partners who are strongly pro-Palestinian and present the altruistic cliche argument of being anti the murder of civilians, infants? I don't know. And I don't know how you deal with that, because it's very difficult. It's very difficult because these are people who are close to you. There's some issues that are beyond the pale. Different, as individuals, we probably have different issues that constitute beyond the pale. I don't think I could have a relationship with people who are pro-Palestinian and present these cliches. I have an uncle who certainly is that. I wouldn't be surprised if my uncle was marching in those anti-Israel marches in London, right? I mean, he's Jewish by heritage, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was marching there. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a Free Palestine thing going. He's a leftist, very sympathetic to Marx, and is very pro-Palestinian. I don't have much of a relationship with him as a consequence. I haven't for, when I was a kid, I loved this guy. He was the best uncle you could imagine. He babysat for me many times. He lived in Israel in those days. Babysat and everything, and I liked visiting when I'd go to London. But once I became an adult and actually we started to argue about philosophical, cultural, economic issues, it just became untenable to have a relationship. And today, there's no way I could have a relationship with somebody, who was pro-Palestinian, presented, who advocated for these altruistic cliches. What next? So it's just, you have to figure out how valuable is the relationship and how much pain, how important are these issues, and how much pain does the people surrounding you inflict on you by supporting those issues. It's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, I have my standards, which are fairly high. There's certain things I can't tolerate from people who around me, and part of the issue is that part of the reason I don't see family as often as maybe many people do is because I don't want to get into those discussions and debates and arguments. Not about this, because most of my family is in Israel and very supportive of Israel and very hateful of the Palestinian, hateful of what the Palestinians are doing and correct on it. But on other things, on a million different other things that I despise. And family is not blood. Screw blood. I don't care about blood. Blood is for barbarians. Blood is for the collectivists. Blood is for the tribalists. I value blood not. Nothing, nada. All right. What is not wet says review culture of critique. I don't know what that is. I'm guessing I'm going to hate it. I'll look it up and see, but I'm guessing I'm going to hate it. Culture Critique Series, a trilogy of books. An anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist, white supremacist, and retired professor. Oh, God, I can see already. Wonderful. Ian Mikat says, I blocked a girl I had a crush on because she's an anti-Semite, an anti-Israel leftist. That's how I recommend you all deal with it too. Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on your personal values and how important this particular issue is. But I think for many of us, this is one of those issues where I don't think I could tolerate people around me who held an anti-Israel or an anti-Western civilization view on this issue. All right, everybody. Thank you for all the super chatters. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Daniela Sosa, for coming in with the $50 there at the end. I really appreciate the support. There's a show tonight at 7 p.m. East Coast time. I'll be interviewing Gene Maroney. We're talking about psychological issues. So join us. So Gene Maroney tonight. I know Apollo Zeus is probably doing flips in the air because he's a huge fan. Thinking, introspection, any questions about skills, things like that. I'll have the topic up on the agenda later today. But thank you, everybody. Christian, if you're listening, you've got some perfect segments for short videos that I hope you put up quickly. One on Bin Laden and TikTok, and one on Shapiro, Owen, and Tucker. Talk to you all tonight. I hope you all join me with Gene Maroney tonight, 7 p.m. East Coast time. See you here. Bye, everybody.